Welcome to Spain, Poco a Poco. Buenos dias, Tanya.
Buenos dias. Today we are going to talk about Ernest Hemingway. And this is kind of exciting because I think a lot of people think of him. They think of, obviously his writing, but Cuba, Paris, all the things that he did. But he was very big in Spain. He loved Spain. And he even called it the last good country left. So we're going to delve into sort of his life in Spain, some other things too, but most predominantly his life in Spain and how that inspired his writing.
Yes, he is. I think I know him for his love of Spain and kind of his love of the virulent nature, the machismo of Spain, right? Like that he
Yes.
lived a hard life, right? He lived a kind of a hard drinking, party hard, and running with the bulls is up his alley, right? So
Yeah, I think a lot of that. Definitely he's renowned for his excessive drinking. I think that we that's definitely part of it. And but yes, the all the bullfighting and all this, and he was part of the not part of, but he was in Spain during the Civil War, being a correspondent. So that he wasn't shying away from everything exciting. He was definitely not sitting. He was probably sitting on the beach here too, but there was a lot going on in his life.
right.
So he was born in 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois. But he was also he was a Red Cross ambulance driver in Italy during World War One. He served as a war correspondent in World War II, and he won a Bronze Star for bringing the realities of war to readers in World War II. And over his life, he wrote 7 novels, 6 short stories collections, and 2 nonfiction works. So not a small amount of stuff going
No,
on for him.
you can't say he was a failure. That's for sure.
No.
And to top off his list of failures, he also won a Nobel Prize. The man,
Yes.
nothing going for him.
Yeah, really quite a lot. I think there's one thing that I did find during his during researching him, which I think was very interesting and absolutely horrifying. Really, he had so many injuries in his life, and I think that he had a car crash in London during World War II. He had a motorbike accident in Normandy. He had 2 plane crashes in Africa in 1954. He was a boxer and a football player as a kid. He was in a mortar blast in Italy during World War One, and he had a concussion when he fell off his boat. So and he also, and his family and everything, there was a lot of history of mental illness of various different types of mental illnesses, but it's also kind of thought that maybe he also suffered from CTE, which we hear a lot about now, which is chronic traumatic. I'm not
No,
going to
that's
say
a
that
long
word.
word, and
Encephalopathy or whatever.
it's the football thing. It's with the football.
It's the football thing, yes. So clearly, when you see all the things, all the injuries that he had to his head, plus if you add onto that the mental illness that ran in his family, and rather a very sad amount of suicides in his family history, and him included, which is how he died. His alcoholism, and all those
Mhm.
things kind of maybe go together, and also his creativity and all the books that he wrote prolifically, like was all combined in this soup of everything that happened during his life.
Right.
So
I mean,
yeah.
it's a lot. And you look at those injuries, you look at what he experienced and the mental illness. It makes sense that he was such a drinker as well, right? That
Hmm.
was the therapy of a manly man back in the day, right? That was
Yes, and I think these days the glorification of alcoholism in this regard, I think is kind of taking it's kind of not quite as glorified now
right.
when people are looking at how his life was and what his family history was. So I think that maybe the glorification of the alcoholism that he had is now not maybe a major part of what people think about him. And we'll, as we get into why Spain,
Hmm.
I think we'll see a lot more richness to his life than just the fact that he wrote and was an alcoholic and people, drinking beers on the beach. Like, so let's
Or
dive
than the
into it.
drink and suicide and mental illness, right?
Exactly. Yes.
What's interesting about him is the love that he had for Spain, right? So he had visited a few
Hmm.
times. The first time he visited was in the mid 1920s, and then he came back in the 30s for the during the Spanish Civil War and wrote about that for newspapers, for like the kind of the AP of the day. I forget what it was
Mm-hmm.
called, like the
Yep.
National American, I don't know, some long thing. Do you remember what it was called?
some the North American Newspaper
There you
Alliance.
go. Just rolls
Yep,
off the tongue. And
it does. I think it's also called the NANA, I
the
think.
Nana? He wrote for Nana?
Nana. I don't know. That's what it was called, yes. And he was supporting the Republicans against Franco, and he also wrote for a Chicago
Called
magazine
Ken.
called
Yep.
Ken,
Hmm.
which was a liberal publication. So that's what he was doing here in Spain during that time, writing for papers back in the States.
Being, yeah, telling the story of what's going on, right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the first time he visited was in 1923, and he loved the Spain, the culture of Spain. Obviously, the bullfights. We know him for exalting the running of the bulls, right? I think he's kind of what put the running on the
Mm-hmm.
bulls on the map for the world, right? I mean, it's because of him that
Yeah.
Pamplona has the tourists it gets now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can imagine coming from America and coming to see a bullfight and the running of the bulls, I can see how that would be incredibly exciting
Yes.
for somebody that enjoyed that type of thing. And he was captivated by the intensity of it, and also the resilience and the atmosphere and the people. And at that point, he had sort of declared Spain his spiritual home. And I think he just loved every aspect of Spain. And it was just a very different experience for him. And it was a very inspiring place for him to be as a
Hmm.
writer.
And I think two of his books are set in Spain, right? That's where his inspiration comes from, like The Sun Also Rises and For Whom the Bell Tolls. I had to read For Whom the Bell Tolls in high school, and don't ask me complete details, but I remember it was about the Spanish Civil War, and I had to read it.
Well, and from my part in England when I was growing up, For Whom the Bell Tolls was played on the movie was played on the BBC, like I don't know, every other week or something. It was one of my father's favorite movies. It was an Ingrid Bergman, Gary Cooper movie, and it was just and my dad loved it. So I have seen that movie probably about 1,000 times, because back in the day, in case there's any young guys listening here, I mean, we had four
Yeah.
channels, so whatever was playing, you watched.
And there was a rotation, right?
Yes, it was a rotation, but it was the
Yeah,
same
exactly.
movies,
Yeah.
right? So if For Whom the Bell Tolls, if that was one of the movies, then that was coming on probably once a month or something, and that was definitely one of them, based on the book, obviously.
So we'll talk about. Should we talk a little bit about these books? So there was The Sun Also Rises, right? So a significant portion of the story is about the running of the bulls, the Fiesta de San Fermin in Pamplona, and it talks about the bullfights and the festival and all of
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, and that was inspired by his first
Right.
trip. So I think when he had his first trip, that was the book that sort of started coming out of that. And he was writing that in Valencia. He started writing it at the Hotel Reina Victoria.
I had no idea about that. So every time I walk by that hotel, now I know.
You can think of him. And then he wasn't just he wasn't that I mean, he wasn't just interested in the bullfighting. He was literally following a matador. So, these matadors were also, and I don't know if they still are because I don't follow it. They were
Hmm.
famous. They were like very, very well known. And he was not just following going to bullfights, he would be following a matador around the bullfights that person was doing. Cayetano
Yes.
Ordonez. Yes, I know it's almost your name.
That is the Spanish spelling of my name.
I am now gonna start calling you Cayetano.
Well, side note, that's the transliteration of my name. So that's exactly how you pronounce my
Oh,
name.
oh my gosh! Well, there we go. So we'll start calling you that. But you are not a matador from the 1920s,
No, I am
right?
not. Or from the
Okay, just checking.
2020s.
Just checking. All right, and then he had Death in the Afternoon, which was 1932, and this was a nonfiction work, which again delves into the world of bullfighting and Spanish history, rituals, and all the significance of all of this. So that's more of just a nonfiction work where he was just really interested in writing about all of
about
that.
life in Spain. And if he was alive, we could
Yeah.
interview him for our show because he seems like an expert.
He clearly knows a lot about it. And then he did The Dangerous Summer. And this book was actually published after his death. But that also focused on the intense bullfighting rivalry between Luis Miguel Dominguin and Antonio Ordonez and in 1959. So that was also just set against the backdrop of Spain. So that was something that was published later. And then the last one
was a play called The Fifth Column.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote this during the Spanish Civil War, and it explores the tensions and the conflicts of the era, and it kind of like reflecting his personal account and his experiences as a correspondent during the Spanish Civil War.
Mm-hmm. And those were the specific ones that really are about Spain. But I think Spain overall was a huge muse for him. So it was not necessarily other things that he wrote didn't have the inspiration from Spain as well. But those are the ones that are really specifically about it. And I think we have the hidden influence of Valencia, because since we're in Valencia, let's kind of jump to, he was all over Spain. He was in Madrid. He was, in different parts of Spain, obviously. But if you are in Valencia here, you will see his name a lot and you'll hear about him a lot because he was around here living and hanging out.
And I didn't really notice. I did not know about how much Valencia that he was involved in the Valencian life. Like I had always just associated him with Pamplona. Like that was kind of, I mean that I think most people do, right? So I didn't know he had visited all these places in in Valencia. So I mean,
yeah. So we went to La Pepica restaurant, which is down by the beach, and they are very proud of the history they have with Hemingway there. He obviously spent a lot of time drinking down there. And the beach back then was very different. If you've seen sort of pictures of European beaches or maybe even New England beaches back in sort of like the 20s and 30s, you'll kind of have this image of these little huts and tents that are on the beach that everyone can change in. So back then the beach, it didn't have these big buildings and all this stuff. It was little restaurants with these little huts on the beach. It was this very cute, very remote sort of place, and that was the Valencia beach that Hemingway was hanging out in and getting inspiration and drinking and eating.
And back then it wasn't even the Valencian beach. It was a town called Cabanyal, right? So it wasn't even...
Well, there you go. Exactly. It wasn't even connected. But we actually had I think it's, we had a nice paella there and with some nice little appetizers, the little tapas that went with it. I would highly recommend that as a little spot to go as a tourist or take some friends. If you have friends in town, definitely book. It's a very large, it's quite a large restaurant, but you need to book for it. Obviously, it's right on the beach.
And then he also visits this place, which is now called Cappuccino Valencia, which is in the old town, which during his time was called Cafe El Siglo. Siglo?
Siglo. Cafe El Siglo.
So he is rumored to have gone there a lot as well.
Okay. They must have also been serving beer, I would imagine. And he also loved fires. And he, as we talked about before, the fiery festival that we all know and love here absolutely fits with his very dangerous lifestyle. Right. And who knows what it was like back then too. And they called it that he loved it for its rebirth through destructive symbolism, which I can sort of see. I can totally see that.
I mean, and that is that we've talked about it before, and I have Spanish friends that talk about all the fires and why we have all these fireworks. They burn stuff on all the, not just fires, these other festivals. I love that the rebirth through fire, and they love that here. So it's
absolutely. And then he did finally come to Spain in 1959, 1960, and he covered bullfighting for Life magazine. This was the last time that he was in Spain, obviously because he died in 1961. But he still, I mean, he was living back in America at that time, but he still called Spain the country that he loved the most, maybe next to America. I mean, I don't know which one would come first, but definitely he had a passion for Spain.
And I can see why. So do I.
I mean, that's why we're all here, because we all have a passion for Spain. So we can align with him there, I think.
I mean, it's making me want to, reread these books now that I'm here. I mean, it would be nice to go back and revisit these writings now that my feet are on the ground,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, and I think specifically because a lot of those works were in a very tumultuous time in Spain's history. I think he was really bringing back the vitality of Spain and its people, even within these tragedies and this time that was, not the best of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the books, I'm sure, kind of show, since he loves Spain so much, show a lot of passion for not just Spain but also the people and how everyone deals with that.
Yeah,
It was his
it
muse.
was his muse. And our muse now too.
Absolutely. So back to reading
Back to
Hemingway.
Hemingway.
All right, that's what we have for Hemingway. I hope you all enjoyed our little poco a poco about his life here.
Until the next Poco a Poco.
Thank you for listening to Our Spain Poco a Poco. Since you love us so much, please do go on to our social media and follow us and like us and subscribe where you're listening, because it really does help us to grow and stick around and do what we are very much enjoying doing.
And, give us a shout out on the social medias. Give us a comment on what you would like to hear us talk about. I mean, we like to hear ourselves speak, but we do want to make this, informative for our listeners.
Absolutely, yeah. You can comment on one of our posts, or you can send us a message through our Spain Facebook page or Instagram. So we would love to hear from you.
Yes, we would. Till the next episode.
Bye.